Welcome to Parashat Naso. I don't know if it has been a time in your life where, let's say, you were not Shomer Shabbat yet, or Shomer Kashrut, whatever your thing is, and then whatever you grow through time, and then you look back and you're like, how did I ever live without Shabbat? How did I ever how did I ever function without it? If I were to give you, that's a very spiritual way to look at it. But if I were to share with you on the physical realm, I want you all to think when you're lost somewhere and you need directions, prior to you having your phone that has a Google Maps and it could tells you where to go, right? How did you ever survive before GPS, right? Last I checked, we had all these maps with the pen mark trying to tell us from state to state. But if you look in retrospect, and I were to ask you again, can you go back to having the map? Forget your phone. We're going to move to somewhere in the mountain and we're going to just live our lives simply. 99% of us will say absolutely not, right? You leave your house nowadays with your phone, but you could forget the rest of everything. But as long as you have your phone, you feel like, okay, secure, right? Before we had a bag, our makeup, now it's like your phone, right? Can you envision a life without it? Why am I telling you this whole story? Because if you really, really tune into the Parsha, you're not going to believe in retrospect, how did you ever survive without it? Because it's literally living Torah. It's really living Torah. So today's Parsha is going to be somewhat deeper in certain areas that has a lot of things going on. Walk with me in this wonderful journey. We're going to be away for an hour. We'll be right back. I will give you my word. I will not leave you somewhere. And I could tell you that everything can wait. Because when you're present where you need to be, bracha, when you're present to where you need to be, is siman bracha. It nourishes to a level that you literally carry it with you. So having said that, please go on and read the Parsha. And let's start. So anybody knows the name of the Parsha this week? Naso. Okay. And the title that I gave was Preparing to Enter the Desert. And if you look through a Parsha, you're like, what are you saying? Why? So let's look inside. Now, I should let you know that the beginning of the Parsha is going to sound somewhat familiar to what we have been learning the last few weeks since Bamidbar. And it's not because I chose to give you any repetition, but because in this Parsha, we still have that energy from the Parsha, and we still have certain things as a foundation to how we're going to be launched forward with this Parsha. Okay, so this Parsha is the longest Parsha of the Torah, but in many ways it feels like one of the most confusing Parshiot because it's literally all over the place, right? The Parsha moves from topic to topic very quickly, very abruptly. And let's just see for a minute, what is it speaking about? Speaking about counting the Levites, then it moves on to the impurity on the camp, the Tumah, then speaks about theft, then speaks about Sotah. Sotah is a woman who is adulterous. Then speaks about the Nasir. If you remember, the Nasir is the man with the long hair who doesn't shave and doesn't cut his hair, doesn't drink wine. And then goes on to Birkat Kohanim and the offering of the princess. And then suddenly, it turns to Moshe hearing the voice of Hashem from the Mishkan. It's literally all over the place. So at first glance, seems that it's very fragmented. It's like different things that it's telling you. But in truth, this is the exact opposite, because Parashat Naso is one continuous process if we're able to look within. Everything in the Parsha is preparing the Jewish people for one thing, and that thing is entering the desert. And as we learned in the last week, so I'm just going to say a few things from last week's learning, that the desert is not only a physical place. You remember we spoke about the physical being a spiritual place. The desert represents spiritual emptiness, as we said, confusion, distraction when I'm worried, when I'm stressed out, and a place where holiness is not naturally visible. That's what a desert is, a place where a person can feel very disconnected, dry, unstable, or spiritually lost. And if you want to look into depth with that, you're welcome to listen to the Shavuot class because I covered that in depth. But how do we take this forward? before Bnei Israel enters that reality, that desert, they first need to prepare themselves. Not physical preparation, which they did, but spiritual preparation. And the Rebbe explains something really beautiful, that the few parshiot, Bamidbar, all the parshas from Bamidbar and Naso, and even Behalotecha, are really preparations for entering this wilderness. If you look at the deeper foundation of this parshiot, you're going to see how all of them is a preparation for the Jewish people entering the desert. And the funny part is, like, we're not entering the desert today that I think of, right? Nobody's moving right now to the Sahara or anything like that. So why is this so relevant to our lives? Because we're literally in the desert, spiritually. And everything happens v'eshkacha pratit, because the more you look inside the parsha, the more your life is actually going to make sense. So the Jewish people haven't started traveling yet, and the first begin built internally, telling us something really profound and important, that Judaism never expects us to escape the desert. We're not meant to run away from our problems and our issues and anti-Semitism. And, a lot of people are saying, I'm moving. Well, where are you moving? It doesn't matter where you move. You can be found, right? So the purpose is really to transform it. That's the purpose. The purpose is not to run away from the problems and the stresses and the spiritual load that we feel, but it's actually to transform that very place that Hashem puts you at. So as we learned in last week's Parsha, the Torah was not given in a garden, but it was given in the wilderness, because the mission of a Jew is to bring holiness into that place that feels spiritually empty. And that's one of the main things that we took from last week's Parsha, last week's class, which was Shavuot. But before a person enters from the desert outside, first we have to conform with the desert within it, within yourself. And if you think about, we all are in a quest. I'm going to change the world, right? And there's a analogy, or there's a thought, that a baby is born with his hands clenched, and when a person passes on, we pass the hands open. Why? Because when a child is born, he's like, I'm coming here to conquer the world. And as you grow older, you realize you can't control the world, you can't control your community, you can't control your relatives or your friends or your destiny or your parnasa, or you cannot control any of that, right? But the only part that you could actually have some control is tagging aware at the inner garden. What you're planting within yourself. That's the only thing that you could really, and that is the reason we live with our hands open. Because what did I conquer? The only thing you could conquer is your inner world. That's it. You don't even control if you could put all your eggs in one basket to go do a business and it could go sour. You could, right? You don't even control the outcome of the effort that you put in. You only control the choices that you make in thoughts and speech and action, obviously. But a person transforms the desert outside, the first need to have and we'll go within and transform the desert within ourselves. So that is actually the journey of Parashat Naso. So because this Parsha is dense, I will stick to all these different things all the stops that I told you, right? Like the name of the Parsha, I will stop on the Birkat Kohanim, all these different things that we spoke about. So Naso, the name of the Parsha itself, gives us the entire theme of this Parsha. Anybody knows what Naso means?
To carry.
To carry. It actually means to lift. As it says in the Torah, Naso et Rosh, lift the head of the Jewish people. Why doesn't the Torah simply say count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Because the Torah is not interested in a mathematical equation. The Torah, Hashem, is not trying to calculate the population in numbers. He knows how many we are. The counting was an elevation. It was taking us from this place and bringing us to a higher level. So when Hashem counts the Jewish people, he's revealing our importance, our mission, and our hidden potential. And hidden potential that sometimes even ourselves, we don't know we have this hidden potential, right? Sometimes you go through life and somebody says, oh, I didn't know you're so good at it. Like, really? Really? I'm so good at that? Really? I could bring this into the world? Hashem sees it, and that's why you're counted. Because you have something that the world cannot exist without you. You are strategically placed for the purpose of this world to happen. So this expression, lift the head, means that the Jew becomes elevated when we recognize that we were created for something meaningful. And most people live spiritually small. Not because we lack greatness or because we forget or because we don't want, but because we actually don't even know who we are. We're not even clear. We don't have sharp clarity what's your mission on planet Earth. And this is already one of the first lessons of the Parsha, that spiritual growth begins when a person stops seeing themselves as an accidental, because a Jew is counted because a Jew matters. And this becomes the central question of the entire Parsha. How does a person remain spiritually elevated, Naso, lift, while living inside a very physical world? And how do you carry this holiness into the desert, which we spoke in depth last week? So immediately the Torah presents us with a strange problem. Gershon, if you know the children, where Gershon was the oldest from the son of Levi, and logically, Gershon should have been counted first as the primogenito. I say primogenito? Firstborn. Yet the Torah counts Kehat before Gershon. Why? Because the Midrash explains that Kehat carries the Aaron. He's carrying the Aaron from one place to the other. What is the Aaron? Is the ark that held the tablets and the Torah itself. And this is the reason why he was given precedence. But the Rebbe explains something much deeper, that Kehat really represents Torah itself. It represents Torah study, spiritually awareness, elevated consciousness. It's like when you learn Torah, who you becoming through this learning of the Torah. Now, Torah changes the way a person thinks, right? And I just said, if you look back at yourself, before you ever came to a Torah class, and you look at yourself how you think now, it's completely elevated. Why? Because the Torah lifts the mind beyond the limitations of the physical world. If you could be in the biggest gridlock of your life, and if you actually sit down and learn Torah, you're going to come out on the other end as a brand new person. All that confusion is gone. So that is why Kehat comes first. Because before a person can transform life properly, the first needs truth. You need to know what the truth is. You need a compass, a GPS, a direction in life, and you need a vision how you're going to get there, right? And if you think about it, the new generation is all into vision boards. We totally should do that, an activity, vision boards. Why a vision board is so important? Because it's a blueprint of where you're going. A vision board is the reason why you're doing what you're doing. And I tell you that personally, through the many different moments that life was challenging, I remember, especially when my parents were not well and it was difficult and I lost them, I remember that just like a week later, I went and I changed the screensaver of my phone and my computer. I had a picture of my parents and me hugging. I still have pictures of my parents everywhere. But I actually put the picture of my kids because I needed to move forward. It's not that I didn't, God forbid, don't love them. It's that you need to have the vision that is on the tree, right? That you need to know why are you waking up in the morning. And that's the Torah learning. But the Torah does something fascinating. Although the counted first, Parashat Naso itself begins with Gershon. Why? Because inspiration is not the goal, but transformation is the goal. The highest spirituality is not what happens during a class, during davening, during inspirations, but the real test is what happens afterwards. I repeat that. But transformation is the goal, meaning that the highest spirituality is not what happens when you are imbued in spirituality, when you're feeling holy. If you're learning, obviously you're going to feel great. If the question is what happens 5 minutes later, were you able to take that inspiration and actually transform your life? So the real test is actually what happens afterwards. Did the Torah actually enter your life? Did it affect you? How you speak, how you react, how we handle stress, build relationships, how we parent, how we work, how we carry yourself in everyday life, how you stress out because things are difficult. So that is actually Gershon. Looking deeper, Gershon comes from the word Lamed Gimel Reshin, Lagarsh, which means to vanish, and Gershon carried the outer coverings of the Mishkan that protected it from external influences, right? So you have the things that were carried inside, the things that were carried outside. That is Gershon. Who was looking deeper? Gershon comes from the word Lagarsh, which means to vanish. And Gershon carries the outer coverings of the Mishkan that protected it from the external influences. It's the protection, it's that shield. So spirituality, Gershon, what does it represent? Represent removing negativities when you create a boundary between the outside wall and the inner wall that you're in, creating boundaries and protecting holiness. Kehatz represents bringing holiness inwards because it was carrying the Torah. And Gershon represents removing what blocks holiness. It's creating that shield, that protection. And the Torah intentionally places Gershon at the opening of Naso to teach us something fundamental, that the purpose of the Torah is not to escape, but is actually to transform. And might be one of the biggest struggles in religious life. A person can become deeply inspired emotionally and yet remain unchanged practically. You could love Torah. There's this thing that says, think Jewish. I'm a Jew. I think Jewish. I eat bagels. I eat lox. It's not supposed to be an outer thing that you just, feel Jewish, so therefore, eat bagels every Sunday. That's not what Judaism is about. It's not about your matzo ball soup. It's about the conversations around your Shabbat table. It's about running to light your candles at 6:15 or whatever the time might be. It's practical. Judaism is alive and well and lived. It's not esoteric and thought, and it's not about intellectual pursuit. It's about practicality. How do you actually apply it to your life? So a person can become deeply inspired emotionally and yet remain unchanged practically. People can listen to endless classes, read the Torah, feel spiritually moved, and yet their actual life remains disconnected from what they know. And this is exactly what the challenge of the Jewish people are preparing for before entering the desert. Because once they enter the world, once we came to enter this world, the challenge will not be remaining inspired. Inspiration, you feel it. The challenge will be, will you remain aligned to your mission? Are you going to be aligned to your mission? Are you going to skip the French fries at McDonald's because they happen to be on your way and you're starving? Are you really going to make that choice? Are you going to realize that Judaism is way beyond what I am currently doing, and that Judaism cannot be practiced? Okay, I'm Shomer Shabbat. That's absolutely not true. Judaism is that guy who's going up in the mountain every single day. And you pray a little bit better, and you think a little bit better, and you speak a little bit better, and you are in that direction. You remember? My husband said in that one class, it's not about the position, it's about the direction. It's not where I'm at. Shomer Shabbat, ya. It's about where am I going? And it's interesting because I'm dealing with a lot of shidduchim from people that I know. And there was somebody who just recently said, can you ask all these questions to the guy? And he said, yeah, I'm shy, I can't ask him those questions. I am. And nobody knows that part of it is hidden somewhere. And I said, I can't ask those questions. And I said, what? Just go out. You figured it out. And she says, I need to know if my life will be one of growth. I'm not looking for somebody who's just so much about that. I want to understand where are we going. And that's really the whole point. This is why the Mishkan, really beautiful, itself was made out of physical materials, right? Gold, silver, wood, oil, fabric, skins, all these wonderful things, because the Mishkan was not built in heaven. It's not a spiritual destination. It's a very physical, all the jewel, all the beauty stuck into the Mishkan. Because the Mishkan is specifically something that is physically, it's an inside physical reality. So Judaism does not believe in holiness that belongs only in the spiritual moments. The purpose is to bring holiness into your ordinary life. Not only think Jewish, but stick Judaism in. It should be the glass through which you see your whole life. You know how you could take, now they have all these uplights, right? So in the olden days, you need to get blue uplights, green uplights, yellow uplights to decorate the room. Now all it needs is a filter, right? And you could change it with the button. Now it's green, now it's blue. That filter needs to be Torah to your whole life, to permeate the entirety of your life. And that is the real avoda. Not inspiration alone, but transformation. And this is true when the next question becomes, what prevents holiness from entering a person's life? What is that shield that doesn't, what is that thing that stops it? And the next sections of this parsha begin answering that very question. So let's see. This is why the Torah now moves into impurity, tuma, thefts, sotah, and the nazir. At first glance, these topics feel disconnected, and one might think, what on earth is going on? Read the parsha, you'll see. You're like, I don't get. Okay, now what? Like before you even finish to read one sentence, you're like in a whole different topic. But they are all exposing places where inner instability exists. Each of these things I want to speak to you about. Before entering the desert, the Torah forces the Jewish people to confront themselves honestly. What inside you is still unaligned? What inside of you still lacks clarity? And what inside of you still collapses under pressure? Where are your pain points? Because the desert exposes all our instabilities. The distractions of lies expose instability. Our success, you feel very successful, you're in the top of the ladder. What happens the very next day? Can't find yourself, right? Pain exposes all our instabilities, right? If you have anything that hurts you, which I'm sure we all have something, all of a sudden you're still vulnerable, right? Loneliness exposes instability and freedom. And that is why the preparation matters so much. So now the Torah moves on into impurity. Impurity means tuma, and this means being sent out of the camp. You remember, if somebody was impure, they needed to be sent out. Spirituality, this teaches that holiness requires boundaries. Not everything belongs inside the camp. Not every influence belongs inside the person's inner world. And I want to tell you that I had noticed the last few weeks, I think this is week 3, that I see in the morning that I just go on Instagram because I post, and the first thing that comes to me is all the anti-Semitic attacks. And I realized that I started feeling very shaky, right? I started like hovering over my kid. I started like acting. And I realized that it's a complete direction, not detour, but it's an outcome, not of what's happening in the world, but of what am I allowing from this world to enter inside. It's not what's happening out there. It's what's happening in here. And I realized that I need to actually go there and also put that filter that I just told you from the uplights that is called Torah. I don't need to entertain crazy, because the more you entertain something, the more it's going to permeate. There's no such a way for you to see something and say it doesn't affect me. To the point, and I want to digress for 1 second, that when a woman goes to the mikveh, she needs to see the mikveh lady before she goes home. She's not supposed to just leave the mikveh around home and that's it. Why? Because if she encounters a non-kosher animal on the way, she has to turn back and immerse again. So by seeing the mikveh lady, who's somebody that Shamayim, she already created a shield. And the reason, if you go deeper, which I'm not going to do right now, I'm just giving you a little taste, is because what you see has a consequence, or it has an effect on the child that you conceive. And there are many, many stories in the Torah. One of them, Yaakov Avinu with the ships with the stripes, and the other ones I said in a class. What you see, it has a tremendous effect in stabilizing or destabilizing your inner world. And everything that you put out into the world is an outcome of your instability or instability. Okay? So this is incredibly relevant in our generation because people live with endless input, noise. A lot of times I'm like, I can't hear noise. Shh, make everything quiet, right? The media, comparisons between what am I doing and what the other person is doing. Constant stimulation, constant distraction. And slowly people lose their inner clarity without noticing it. And the Torah is teaching us that if you want the Shekhinah to dwell within you, you must protect the environment internally. And that is Gershon. Protect, create a shield. Not every thought deserves residence in your mind. Not every influence deserves access to your inner world. Not all the news need to be seen by you daily. All those news in 3 seconds are going to be gone and there will be new ones instead. But the camp must be protected. And then the Torah moves on and discusses theft, right? Stealing. Because once inner clarity weakens, integrity weakens next. I'm going to repeat that because I'm going somewhere with this. Because once inner clarity weakens, your integrity also weakens because you don't know anymore what's right, what's wrong. And depth is not only financial, that is not only what we're talking about here, but people steal emotionally too. They steal your attention. Oh, can I just have 5 minutes? They steal your trust. They betray you. They steal your time. They steal your dignity as a human being. And they also steal your emotional energy. And I am sure you all have your phones. When they're 100%, you call all your best friends and you scroll and you do whatever. But if you have 1%, you're literally saving your battery. You put it on like low mode, right? Because it's so precious. That is your inner core. Your inner core right now is functioning in low mode because we're so bombarded. Look around us. Look at all this anti-Semitism, all the propaganda, all the graduation craziness that's going on. We're in the month of graduation from colleges. The protests, look what they're doing. Exactly that. And I'm not saying do not participate on these protests. Obviously, we need to show up. But what is the tool that is taken? And it's all because we're being robbed from our right to exist, from our peace of mind, from our places where we chose to go. And I was really amazed yesterday at Berkeley. I don't usually post politics or anything like that, but I am posting anti-Semitism. And I was blown away by a professor at Berkeley College that refused to give the diploma to a student that came with the Palestinian flag. And he was left with his flag and his kafia, stretching his hand. And he said, and he kept pushing, and he's like, until somebody went on the speaker and said, in our college, we do not accept flags. If you want to receive your degree, then I'm happy to hold your flag. And he had to give the flag before he came. That is an incredible stand. And the person who did it was not even Jewish, was a black professor. I don't know who he is, but he deserved the Nobel Prize of Peace because it took a lot of guts in the climate that we're living to stand for the truth. And this is what the Torah is really coming to teach us. So sometimes people even steal from themselves, going into a deeper layer. They betray their own potential. They shrink so others can succeed. And the Torah is teaching us that holiness cannot survive where there is internal dishonesty. You have to really know who you are. You have to be crystal clear what your purpose is in this life. I don't care if you are newborn or if you're 150 years old. If you're breathing, there is a purpose for you, whether the purpose is for you or whether the purpose is for what you are bringing into this world. It doesn't matter. We're a tool in a very big chain of events leading us to the ultimate place, which is Mashiach. So the Torah is teaching us that holiness cannot survive where there's an internal dishonesty, and that a person cannot build a mishkan, which is the whole point of living externally while internally living fragmented. You need to get your ducks online and understand what are you here? Yes, you have all these 475 challenges. Thank you, Hashem, no more. Right? Sometimes it's about, somebody said something to me so powerful this week. She said, you know, sometimes you try so hard to fix something, and you try this way, and you try that way, and you try that way. And sometimes it's just about surrender to something greater. Just going to Hashem and saying, Hashem, did it all. Thank you. I follow you. Sometimes it's not so much about you, but it's about being clear, really crystal clear. What is your next step in Avodah Hashem? It's not so simple to know your next step in Avodah Hashem. So now we're moving to Sota. Sota is a woman who was unfaithful, and this may be the emotional center of the whole entire parsha. Hasidut explains that the relationship between husband and wife represents the relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people, as we spoke about it last week. And Shavuot, we just married Hashem, right? We had that class. Please go back there and listen to the class because it explains it at length. And the deeper danger of Sota is not rebellion, but is adrift. Spiritual drift happens very quietly, slowly, one distraction at a time, one compromise at a time, one emotional shift at a time. A person doesn't stop being Shomer, Shabbat, or whatever it is, because one day he says, okay, you know what? Shabbat doesn't just not work for me. That's not how Shabbat, that's not how you stop doing something in life. Even if you go in the most physical sense, if you don't stop going to the gym because one day you just go back, like, you know what? I have my $1,000 membership, I'm not going. It doesn't happen that way. It happens today, it's too sunny. Today I'm cold. Last night I couldn't sleep. It stops with those tiny, tiny drifts that eventually you look back and you look at your app. You know how it tracks how many times you went to the gym? I have not gone for 365 days. But it didn't happen in one day. It took 365 days to get to this place that I haven't gone for a year. So most people do not suddenly disconnect spiritually. They slowly become emotionally absorbed elsewhere. Where is this elsewhere? These distractions are stress. Oh, I can't do this because I'm so stressed out. I don't have time. I don't have time for the class. I have a busy life. My ego, my image, I'm in survival mode, materialism, and constant distraction. So externally, they may all still look connected. How many people you see who on the outside look the part, and in the inside, you question what on earth are they doing? You're like, what? Did I just see that? That person really was doing that? And I'm not going to get into politics, right? But are you for real? That's because internally something has shifted. And this is exactly why the Torah places sotah right before entering the desert, because the desert tests loyalty. So when clarity disappears, what keeps a person anchored and continuing serving Hashem in every step of your life? And immediately the Torah, after sotah, comes the Nazir. The Nazir separates from wine. We know this is one of the things he does. Hasidut explains that wine represents more than physical intoxication. It represents losing clarity, right? If I invite you all to my house tonight and we sit down to drink a glass of wine, right now, we're going to be very centered on what we're doing. But in 2 hours after we drunk the 3 bottles of wine, we're not going to be so, right? It's this cloudiness that is filled. Somebody just said they used the word foggy, right? Foggy, you're not sure. So Hasidut explains that wine represents more than physical intoxication. It represents losing clarity. A person can become intoxicated with. We all think about wine, right? A person can become intoxicated with attention. Like, right? They lost the purpose why you were posting. It became about what I believe on. It became about how many likes I got. Ego, fantasy, validation, very important one now. Image, who I am, success, and distraction. And one of the greatest struggles in modern life is that people rarely experience inner stillness anymore. We are all. And sometimes we need to remind ourselves, just be. Just be. And I have to send you a picture of my computer because I have a sign over there that says, be present. Be present.
We're human beings, not human doings.
It's being beautiful. We're not human beings, we're human doing. We are human beings, we're not human doings. Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. I'll stick to my head. Nice. So people constantly escape themselves. The Nazir represents the decision to stay back and say, 1 minute, I need to realign. Meaning, I do not want to lose myself emotionally or spiritually. And the Rebbe explains that the Nazir teaches that a human being can elevate themselves to such a holiness that even the physical body itself becomes sanctified. And I'm going to sidetrack again, and I wrote myself a note. I'm going to sidetrack for 1 minute, and we could look deeper into this at a different time, that I'll explain from the outside. There's this idea that we have the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov. We have our good inclination, godly inclination, and we have our natural inclination. Our desires, me, myself, and I. And the whole idea to train is not only to go away from negativity, not to do something negative, but is to train our Yetzer to serve Hashem. That's a much higher level. It's not only not to indulge on the pleasures of giving your body all the food that you want, but it's making your eating kadosh. That is the real purpose of creation, is when you could take the most raw, natural, physical, animalistic drive and give that up for Hashem. I'm not saying giving it up. I'm saying channel it to serve Hashem, which was how we were in Gan Eden before we ate from Etzadat, where our bodies were only serving our soul. That's where we're going. We're literally rectifying that time and time again. So Judaism does not reject the physical world, but elevates it through alignment and discipline. It takes a lot of discipline to hit the gym. I want to tell you, I went this morning for a run. It was 6:30, and I was like, every step I gave, leaving the building, I was like, are you kidding me? You have a class today. Are you kidding me? But I know that I'm a different person. That walk is serving Hashem. It's not because it's nice, it's because it's bringing you back, it's clarity. So are you really doing that walk for the L'Kshem Shamayim? Or are you doing it because it's so nice, the weather? It has nothing to do. It could be 0 degrees, it could be a snowstorm, you're still going. So then from here we move to, only after all these preparations, does the Torah move into Birkat Kohanim, because blessings requires a vessel. So only after the preparation does the Torah now move into Birkat Kohanim, because blessings requires a vessel. This is so beautiful, girls. I'm going to repeat it. Only after this preparation does the Torah move into Birkat Kohanim, because blessing requires a vessel. The blessing says, Yisa Hashem panav elecha. May Hashem lift his face towards you. The entire parsha began with us lifting ourselves. Right? Now Hashem responds, blessing us. But the flow here is very important. First comes structure, then comes purification, then we go to an alignment, and only then comes the blessing. Meaning that if you didn't do all this preparation to enter the desert, you wouldn't be able to receive the bracha from Hashem. We needed to internally go through the journey to prepare ourselves, to be ready internally, to be able to go into the desert so we could actually receive Hashem's blessings. So the Torah is teaching us that when a person becomes internally aligned, they become capable of receiving blessings differently. And here the Torah, we move on, and the Torah takes us to the offerings of the princes. The Torah repeats the offering of the princes 12 separate times. You know, we have 12 Shvatim. Why repeat the same thing again and again and again? Just say it one time. It says that happened 12 times. What's the story here? Because externally, the offerings looked identical. Everybody was offering the same thing. But internally, they were completely different. Every tribe brought the same korban, but with a different inner intentions and spiritual pathways. That was totally different one from the other. And this teaches us something really beautiful, that not every Jew reaches Hashem through the same emotional path. We don't all have the same, I always say that we have a 613, 620 rope connecting us with Hashem. Not everybody's looks the same. This one is white, this one is black, this one is twisted. Each one has their own channel. We each struggle differently. We all grow differently. We all connect differently to Hashem. But afterwards, the most important part is that the Torah tells us that all these offerings were totaled together. Because individuality is not meant to separate the Jews. It's meant to strengthen the collectively whole. Meaning that when I am serving Hashem and I'm stressing out and I'm plugging on my life, whatever that looks like, has nothing to do with me, really. I happen to be the person that Hashem chose for it. But it's only me in order to be able to give to someone else. Because my journey, I could be 100% perfect, and Mashiach still didn't come. And it's funny because just a week ago, 2 weeks ago, President Trump said, Day of the Jewish people, keep Shabbat. Mashiach is really coming, right? President of the United States telling us to go keep Shabbos. It means that it's a ripple effect. What I'm doing or not doing has a complete direct relationship to the world around me. And I want to tell you that, thank God, we have all gone through many things. There's a specific challenge I went through in my life. Baruch Hashem, I say I went. I could thank Hashem I went. And while I was going through the challenge, I was saying, Hashem, no puede ser. Like, what is the purpose of this? It's not purpose, like literally not purpose, like in my head. And if now you forward, Baruch Hashem is now 10 years. If I didn't go through that, I could have never helped everyone that Hashem sent my way because I could have never understood the challenge. It was only because I hassled with it until I couldn't handle it anymore. And Baruch Hashem, Hashem gave me the bracha to continue. And I always go back and I go to my husband. I said, Rafael, thank God Hashem gave me this challenge. I really thank you, Hashem. And he looks at me like, you're for real? Because I was not happy. But it was really a gateway for growth. It wasn't about me. It was about enabling me to become a person who could help XYZ in their journey in life. And the same thing, if I go back to the time when we had Avram Moshe, that day that was personally very difficult for my family and I, it was the gateway to endless mitzvot and teilim, endless. So a lot of times that yerida that you're feeling, that going down, is really your potential for the greatest of growth you could ever you don't even envision. And that's why that clarity of knowing who you are, what's your purpose, where you're going, must be. So now the parsha ends with Moshe hearing the voice of Hashem from the Mishkan. And this ending now makes complete sense. Think about it. After the preparation came the purification. After the purification, we had the boundaries. After the boundaries, we became aligned. And now the voice can be heard. Not because Hashem suddenly began speaking, which is beautiful, but because the noise was removed. Hashem is speaking to us, guys. The question is, am I so busy with my scrolling or my Instagram or my whatever that I have tuned him out? And sometimes that's when you could hear. You know, a lot of times I don't want to do the class in my house because my washer and my dryer is always going and they're very noisy. And a lot of times I'm on the phone with somebody and I don't even realize, but I'm intense on my conversation. And the girl who works at home turns off either the exhaust fan or the dryer. And all of a sudden I immediately go, well, because I could even hear my thoughts. With all the rush and the static noise, I couldn't even hear my own thoughts. So this is the idea that now the voice could be heard, not because Hashem suddenly stopped speaking, because he's speaking to us all the time, but because I could actually make space to hear him. And this may be one of the deepest messages of the entire Parsha, that most people are not lacking truth. Truth is right out there. You literally have the biggest, strongest machine called your phone that is a gateway to Torah. It's a real gateway to Torah. You could carry your Teilim and your Sidur and your Tanya and your whatever you want. And the question is, when you go and it tells you you have been 13 hours on your phone, your average usage today is 18 hours. I don't know why, because you should be sleeping by then, right? But out of those 18 hours, which ones were Kadosh and which ones were scroll? Do the math. Write yourself a note. Put a timer. Every time you do Torah, and put a timer every time you are doing I don't know what. And see which one outweighs who. And then see your mental state after. Okay? Because it's a direct relationship. So this is the deepest message of the entire Parsha, that most people are not lacking truth, but that we're lacking clarity. So Parashat Naso teaches us that when a person builds inner alignment before entering the desert, meaning this morning before I went for my run, I pray. I said my Tehillim. I review my shiur. Now that run is completely different. Before I enter the desert of my life, I need to be equipped Soldiers don't go to war carrying in their knapsack their gun and their vest and their boots and their helmet. They come well dressed, ready for the battle. So the question is, are you taking this outer layer from Gershon, that protection? Are you shielding yourself in order for you to go fight that battle? So they can continue hearing Hashem even inside the wilderness, meaning that we must take the Torah from Keot, utilize it, internalize it, create through that the shield to protect and leave outside everything that I don't need in order for me to receive that bracha. So when I'm out in the field, I'm fully protected. I'm inside strong, and outside I have my shield. And when inside strong and outside I have my shield, now I could put the vessel out and really bring and take that bracha from Hashem. I hope you girls enjoy class. It's a very, very incredible parsha.